We're live. Everybody here?
Yeah, we're here. We're here. What's up, my man?
All right, guys. Welcome. Power play. Let's go, guys. Everybody, I'm Marty Grisani. I'm your guest host today because we have a real special show. There's been so much talk about this show. Everyone's talking. The streets are listening. The streets want to know more. I got with me, of course, as always, two of our finest folks here. Number one, top left of me is Ronnie Walker. Welcome to the show, host. Typically, our host, Ronnie Walker.
How you doing, my man? You doing good?
I'm doing good, brother. Thanks for being here. And then, of course, we have Mark Monroe, top right of me. Mark, how are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much, Marty.
How's everything up in good? How about you? How are you doing up in New York?
Oh, amazing, guys. We're doing good. Because I'm real excited about today because, this is like one of those things that everybody talks about. What are lease options, sub to? Really what it is creative, financial, creative deals, right? Everybody's looking for information on this. And then what I'm so excited about is I have two of the guys that I've learned some of this stuff from. I have the godfather of lease options right here, Mark Monroe. And then I have literally the king of sub two with Ronnie Walker. So I'm ecstatic. I know a lot of people watching are going to get a ton of value. So anyway, thank you so much. And let's start this thing off, huh?
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Let's jump right in.
All right, let's jump in. I want to start with Mark. Lease options, Mark. Lease options. You explain it so well. Could you just give us a quick little, basic, what is a lease option? Kind of go into that a little bit. And then I would love a story, if you don't mind, about maybe your first lease option, maybe your favorite lease option, whatever you think would be a good value to add to this this show.
I have many stories. Lease options been my go-to. I started this, I'm going to show my age here, in the late 90s. Was my first investing strategy, doing lease options. Lease options, rent to own. It's really the same thing. You see in some of these groups, lease options and rent to owns are totally different. It's really the same thing. It's a linear contract, just worded differently. You can put rent credits or whatever in it. But anyways, I love lease options. I started out, my background was real estate banking. I got into it in 95. Had a big mortgage company, blew that up, sold that off. And then I came to Florida. And I was just starting out, I was taking some time. I didn't really want an employee. So I became a broker, just myself, and I had an admin. And, I got into doing, refinancing. I was refinancing, people's homes, and that's my background. And then back then, interest rates are around like 7.5, and they're much higher. People wanted to sell their homes, but they couldn't because the houses weren't moving that fast. And they already, they bought another property at a contract. So I'd say, okay, this is what I'll do. I'll buy your property from you on a lease option or rent to own. I usually like to do about 3 years. And so I would do that loan, and I'll do it like around 85% value. So I make money off that loan refinancing. Oh, by the way, your new property that you're going to be doing, I want to do that loan as well. And then I would go ahead and put a tenant buyer into a lease option property. And I knew how lease options work from the real estate banking world. Like back then, the lenders, once you put somebody into a property back then and they've been establishing payment history on a property for 2 years, the lenders would actually look at it as like almost a refinance, like they had equitable interest. So it really, back then, it was so much easier. It's regulations over the years did change some of it along the way, but I love it. And I love doing sandwich lease options. I just love it. And it's a good cash flow. It's an easy entry point.
Well, hold on a second, Mark, because you just said something that it caught my ear, and I'm sure some of the other listeners. And sandwich lease option, what is that exactly? And what was a deal that you just did maybe recently that is a sandwich lease that would help my brain?
Yeah. I did one, not too long ago near Orlando. And what it was, I was trying to do an owner financing, or I was trying to do a sub two on it. But the seller is like, no way, I'm not transferring the deed out of my name over to your name or your entity. So they're like, forget it. So then I pulled out my lease option card. Okay, you can stay ownership of the property, but I want to rent it from you, sublet it, buy it at a certain price, and then I want to sublet it and put my tenant buyer in there. So I'll buy it at, like, say for example, $200,000. I'll lock it in on a contract of $200,000. My rent is like $1,500 a month with my tenant buyer. I'm sorry, with my seller. And I love it because it's a very easy, cheap entry point, and a lot of times I negotiate it just down to 1 month's rent to take the property and control it.
Why would the seller do that? Right? So you're trying to buy it. Why, if it's such a good option for us? Like, I think a lot of people getting started, they're like, well, why would the seller take this? What are some of those things for them?
It's really because you're giving them pretty much almost top value of today's value. That's kind of one of the main reasons. And it works great. Like, if you're a wholesaler, you should definitely learn a strategy as a backup option. But what I do is I'll give them close to the value, and I'll break it down, what you're going to walk away with, with a realtor, all the, negotiating, say that 200,000, I buy it for like 195 or 190. Right. Then I'm turning around and selling it on future value. And I may I'll sell it for like 230. So I'm making like a $40,000 spread on it.
So are you taking, so you're taking what they're doing and buying it full price today, and the end buyer is actually buying on what they would buy it at in maybe an appreciation of what we're anticipating appreciation to be. So you're able to build a spread on selling it above what it is today because they're renting. Am I hearing that right?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. And then you're also creating, I love lease options because you call it cash today, cash tomorrow, and cash at the end. And I can kind of get into it. So you're getting cash because, I'm getting into this property with 1 month's rent down, right? Okay. And say that rent's $1,500. I'm looking for my buyer to do first month, last month security plus 3.5% to 5% down. So I may be getting almost $10,000 from my tenant buyer. Meanwhile, I only give $1,500 to my seller. So I'm making that spread up front. Then I'm also trying to get it like a $250, $300 monthly spread on that too. So whatever the market rent is, say that market rent is like $1,600, but I'm getting it for $1,500. So I'll sell it a little bit more market value because this is somebody that's going to end up owning their home. And the reason why I like to do I like to do 3 years lease option. And some of these people will do 1 year, and it's like the people that you're putting in that property, they make good money, and that's something I make sure that you underwrite, make sure they can qualify. They usually have some credit challenges, and it usually takes about 15 months to 24 months for them to get the credit and lined up. And at that time, it's easier for them to own the property. Plus, they take care of the property, no issues. It's a whole different type of tenant.
Yeah, they're more owners. I mean, Marty, cash up front, cash in the middle, cash at the end. I mean, we're just like raining money, right? I mean,
I love it.
We need to plant some more trees, bro.
I know. I love it. What I really love about it is this. It's for investors who want to have more tools in their tool belt, right? So, when I started, and I think I don't know if I'm talking for Ronnie and Mark here, but sometimes you look at everything one way, right? We're a hammer trying to does it work as a wholesale? Does it work as a wholesale? Well, when you add in lease options, right? When you add in sub-2, when you add some of these more creative ways of taking down a deal, you can then now not have to hand this off, right? You can try to take it down yourself. I love it, Mark. I love it. I think, keep going, because one of the things that I love about it is the end buyer is the renter, right? So you are really one of the most important parts is not just getting a deal, but then finding, I'm assuming, that rent to own individual, right?
Yes, absolutely. They're the ones that they're easy to find, but you want to make sure that they qualify. That's the number one thing. Dodd-Frank Act in 2014 did put some regulations in place for lease options because, some parts of the country, you had some of these sleazeball investors knowing they had like $20,000 to put down to go into a lease option, knowing they couldn't afford it, and then 6 months they evicted them out. So you need to make sure you run them through an RMLO, just like you do on your, the owner financing deals.
All right, real quick. RMLO, just what's that again?
A residential licensed loan officer.
Okay, good to know. I'm gonna write that down like for myself.
Yeah. So you need to make sure for me, I want to make sure that they actually can qualify. I want them to own a home. I feel it's a good feeling knowing that you're helping somebody out and they're getting into a home and you're giving them an opportunity. I can't tell you how many times over the years that people have reached out to me and like, hey, I can't thank you enough. And I get referrals. because it's a good feeling, and you're giving them a stepping stone, and they don't know how to, they're just stuck in that one place and don't think they can ever have home ownership.
Well, and with today's market, I think that's so critical, because what a lot of people don't realize, they look at the market, they see how hot it is, and they're like, everyone's buying a house, right? But what they don't realize is that literally 50% of people who go to apply for a home today, like, the standards are tightening, especially if you own your own business, if you have a side hustle, if you don't have a W-2, like there is minimal options, and the cost of those options are so much higher. So you get people who are semi-successful, right? They might be in the top 20% of income in America, maybe not the top 1%, but they get that from multiple areas. So what they qualify for is substantially less than what they make. And that's like 50% of people that
Ronnie,
people don't realize.
Ronnie, and then you add the other 50% of people who maybe just had a divorce, so their credit's bad.
Exactly. You have a life scenario that literally disrupts the living standard, and they don't know what to do. I think that's great. Mark, there was a question in the comments when we asked from Cash Offer Terms. Says, tell us some of the downsides of lease options. Some people love them, while others dislike them. And I'm assuming this is coming from the downside for the investor, right? If I'm doing lease options and I decide, you know what, I want to add this to my tool belt, you've gone through, an ungodly amount, right? Yeah. So what are the pitfalls? What are the things that, Marty, I jump in, we're like, yo, we want to build 30 properties. We want 30 lease options. Like, what are some of those downsides?
I would say the downsides, if you're going to do a lease option and if a property needs a lot of work, I do not, like, if I have to put more than $10,000 out of pocket and you're doing a lease option, you don't own, and you're not having ownership of the title, that's dangerous. I was talking to this one guy, and he did a lease option, and he put $30,000 in improvements. I'm like, oh my God, like, you don't own that home. So, and then I told him, you better go ahead and record something, notice of interest. So, because technically I've had a situation once back in 2004 where, and I learned from it that, at that time the market took off, and in 2 years that property went up $78,000, and the seller didn't want to sell. So that was probably one of my worst scenarios. So, and then I locked in, I sold that thing literally for $230. It was a 200 scenario I gave you. It jumped up it went up $78,000, and the seller's like, I'm trying to get out of this. So we actually just ended up negotiating. Me as the investor, I ended up pretty much losing on it. I wanted my buyer and my seller just to kind of work it out. So I did lose, $30,000 to $40,000 in that particular deal, but it is what it is. I didn't really lose money, but I did lose money because there's potential profit. That's probably worse.
It's losing money. Trust me. It's losing money. I feel it. It might not be realized, but come on, bro. Like, you lost some money.
No doubt.
Like, it's just what it
is. But Mark, how much money did you make after that mistake?
There you go.
Yeah. Oh God, that was my only mistake. I just made sure that I put in my contract. I learned something from it. So if it's something I can't perform on title, that allows me to get out of my end buyer, and I just give them their option fee money back. That's kind of what, so I don't lose like crazy like that. But I also make sure like everything's recorded, and nowadays like everything's documented. I use an attorney a lot of the time. Everybody's a little different, but the cash flow, I love it. And I highly recommend, if you're a new investor, you don't have a lot of capital, lease options are one of the best ways to go, because you can control property and not take title and have ownership of it just through contracts.
Who are some of the leads that you're talking to, Mark? Like I'm trying to think of like a seller, when you're talking to them, what is it? Somebody that has a listing on Zillow that they're renting that they can't rent, or what? I mean, what does that look like when you're finding someone that you could buy one of these from?
Yeah, especially if you're new getting into investing, you got Zillow's free leads pretty much. I had the market's a little crazy right now, so it's a little bit tougher. But a couple of years ago, I had one VA just strictly going on Zillow and just polling for sale by owners and renters and just seeing if they're willing to rent their property for a few years, and then they're willing to close on it. If you don't have money and you have poor credit and you want to buy a property, make sure that you have a minimum of 2 years to 3 years on that lease option, or your rent to own, if you will. And when you talk to sellers, you want to use the word rent to own. When you say lease option, their head spins. What's a lease option?
Yeah.
So I always use the word, rent to own. They all understand
and that reminds me too, it's funny. So the house I'm in now, we just bought in January and of this year. And a lot of people are like, well, that stuff didn't work anymore. We found this property on Zillow. You know what I'm saying? Like this house that I'm living in, which is a 4,000 square foot house. Like we found this house on Zillow. There's tons of land around us. It's a great area and it was a Zillow lead. So a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't work and the market's here. Like what you're looking for people who are holding out, or it's been up for a long time, or they're asking too much, or they're renting. And you're looking for criteria that they're not an investor. Right. And I think that's what I'm looking for. And even if they are, they're a mom and pop investor. They're not some institution, right? You get up and it's like there's 18 photos and they took it with their phone and their description isn't really well put together. And what I've found is as we start pursuing that, and we look for those opportunities, those are the ones that pop up even on the internet. So I'd recommend, kind of what you're saying is feel free to jump in and just look for some clues, look for information that keys in to the fact that this person might want to sell their house, or this person is, I think what I like to think about, Mark, and I think you touched on this really well, is why would someone sell? Why would someone sell their house for this? And the question is, people want to feel like they're maximizing their investment. And so if you can come in and say, hey, let me help you maximize your investment, but lower the risk and make it easier. I think I'm constantly looking for where's the balance between the most return and the least amount of risk, and also the easiest to do, right? Because I don't necessarily want to do the hardest thing. I don't necessarily want to do that, right? And I think if we all take that idea, we live in America, we live in convenience. Right. And if we can provide a convenience, I think for me, take my own weaknesses and be like, yo, I'm pretty sure my own weaknesses, thousands of people have them too. So let's just bring that out. So I think, Mark, you touch on a great point. Just talk to people and show them, hey, this is what I'm willing to do. Are you? And just explore the situation no matter where you get it from.
You just said something like, why would somebody want to do this? One of my last ones, about a couple of years ago, I did one where the seller, he wanted to do it because the way I do it is I'm taking care of all the maintenance and repairs up to a certain $3,000. Really, I pass that on to my tenant buyer, but they loved it because he's like, oh, can we extend it longer than 3 years? Can we go 5 years? Because I want that cash flow coming in because his mortgage was low. So he liked it. And he's almost like being a landlord, but you don't have to worry about the headaches of being a landlord.
We just did one in New York, 7 years, same exact thing. The guy wanted to do a 7-year lease, which I'm happy. I get cash flow. He gets so absolutely. I love it.
And that one's a fat one. That's a nice cash flow one you're getting on that one. Nice job.
Yeah, it's over $1,000. Yeah, it's over $1,000.
Well, hold on. Pump the brakes, Ronnie. What the heck? What's this? Give me the story on this guy.
Yeah. So we reached out to him through our marketing. He just came in. We flipped the script from the wholesaling, offered the owner finance lease option, and the guy put $30,000 into his backyard. So not only has the house been remodeled, but he redid the backyard to make it basically completely landscaped. He put in a nice pool. There's all kinds of things that are super picturesque. And his mother was living there. Well, his mother's transitioning out. And he's like, look, he wants either top, or he actually wanted more than top price. He's like, dude, this house is nicer than most of the houses in the neighborhood, but I'm just going to rent it. And so we're like, okay, well, what are you renting it for? Or what are you planning on? Well, I'm thinking about this. Well, if you didn't have to worry about it getting destroyed, if you didn't have to worry about this, if you could get a certain amount of money per month, if you didn't have to worry about, and we could guarantee a monthly payment coming in during the rental period, would you rather rent it for a lower amount? Here's what I'm working at. I'm working with homeowners that want to come in and over a period of time, come in and make it their own and purchase it. And then you get to avoid on a $500,000 purchase, you get to avoid nearly $50,000 of commission during this time. Like, do you like that? And he's like, yes. And that's how we got into the conversation. Took 3 or 4 times. Well, come to find out, we're like the monthly payment, I don't remember, I think it was like $1,600, and we're going to rent it for like $2,700.
Oh, love it.
Right. So what you have is you have this varying gap based on what they want and what their expectations are. And so that's how you jump into it, right? You just explore. And if they say no, like he went dark on us for a while, if they say no, you just jump back on the phone. Hey, do you not want to do this? Do you not want to make an extra 250,000 on top of blank, right? Do you not want to make an extra $35,000 in rent, or 70 grand in rent, depending on what the time period is. And you just put that out there. And if they don't, you walk away, you go to the next deal. But that's how we walked into that, is just highlighting what's in it for them. And also being honest, like, the reason why I'm doing this is I get to make money too.
Right.
Like, I make money this way, you make money with it, and this is how we can partner. And the difference between a wholesale deal and here is wholesale, there usually needs to be paying to buy it at cash for a right price.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So on this, you actually align you and the seller's interest together, saying you make money and I make money by facilitating what you're trying to accomplish.
This is mind-blowing stuff, because truthfully, if you are looking at a lot of deals, that this would not be something that you would even fathom working if you're just wholesaling, or, you know what I mean? Like, how would this work, right? But taking this approach, and all you got to do is kind of ask, hey, is this something that you'd be interested in, right? I mean, think of how many deals, people, that you might be looking at, that if you just were to ask the question, even if you had out of 100, Mark, right? I mean, how many potential deals could you have made money? And Mark, isn't that the strategy that you use a lot of times? Like when you're talking to other wholesalers?
In every script that I tell my JVs, my wholesalers, my VAs, in there is like, just part of the questions when they're talking to sellers, would you be willing to rent the property for a few years and then we would close on it? That's one of the questions. And then right from there, that they're open to some type of creative financing deal. And then you can kind of get into it and dig deeper. The other aspect of it, what Ronnie said, I'm going to give you a quick story on one. This was probably close. This was probably a home run one. And
let's go. This is what I'm here for.
I was talking to this lady up in Orlando, January of last year. Negotiated price, we agreed on everything. Then COVID hit. And she's like, I don't want to do anything. What happened was, it's a 5-bedroom home. She was with her children, used to live there. The children moved out. She can't afford it. And she was falling behind on her HOA. And, she was just starting to fall behind. This house was too big for her. So we're going back and forth. She didn't want to do anything, and COVID hit. Then we finally came into end of July, August. She says, okay, I'm ready to go. So I said, this is what I'll do. We agreed to the price. The price at that time, she had it, actually it was on Zillow. She had it for like $325. At that time, it was worth about $330. Okay. So I said, okay, this is what I'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll do into a lease option. I'll go ahead and make sure, she didn't care about cash flow. She just wanted her mortgage payment to be made. So I said, okay, what's your mortgage payment? Her mortgage payment was like, I don't know, like $2,100. And so everything was good on it. I gave her $10,000 to move, to help her move. And then I had to go in there and get somebody cleaned out. Well, during that time, and part of the negotiating is like, she didn't even care about getting any cash. She only wanted $10,000. I said, all right, whatever your balance is on that mortgage, when we go to exercise that option, that's what I'm buying it for. So as I pay it down, so now that property is worth literally $265. Okay. But during the process of when I started the price in January to August, that went up $30,000. So now that property is worth $350. And when I do a lease option, I sell it based off of future value. I look at the area. I went and sold that thing for $385. And I got it, and I'm going to end up buying it for roughly around $265. So I'm going to have roughly about $110,000 of equity.
So Mark, so what you're saying is that when in creative, you can buy the deal, you can lease the deal and put into the paperwork, hey, we can execute the purchase at the current market value or appraised value or whatever. So that way you don't have to lock in a price. You can lock in that future price if you're assuming it's going to go up, to create like this continual spread. For me, what it also does, so cash flow, I love cash flow, but I have a love-hate relationship with cash flow. I'm just going to be honest. I love and I hate cash flow for a variety of reasons we don't have to get into. But what I do love is I love big chunks of money at different times. I don't know how else to say it. Everyone tries to downplay it. Oh, you got to find another deal. Dude, when you get a $30,000 check or a $103,000 check, like, it's sweet. Like, let's just be honest, right?
Super sweet.
So in that scenario, you are playing the game of, I'm going to do a pay down. I'm going to get cash flow. But at any time, I can stoke the fire under this person and be like, hey, the values are going up. If you want to execute your purchase today, lock in this price, it might go up by 20 grand, right? Or if they hold it, like, you can just say, you know what, man, it's going up there. They can hold it. Let me try and get them to hold on for it another 2 years or whatever, to maximize maybe a 2 year later gain, to create a $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 spread. Dude, that's
and the cash flow on that one was about $850 a month. And then also, it did need a little bit more work. I did some of the work, but it needed some more. And they were willing to take it as is, and they went and did the work themselves on that particular one because they wanted that property.
Yeah, this right here, this is how you build wealth.
Yes.
Just FYI, like this right here, like, it's not just about net worth. Like, I think a lot of us talk about, like, oh, we need to build our net worth, which builds wealth, which is true. You need to do that. You need to focus on your net worth. But can you realize that net worth in cash? And what's your net worth ratio compared to how much you have cash? And what are your exit strategies in properties, in your investments? How are you rolling them? What is the next step? And that's what we're talking about, is we're getting in, we get cash up front through the period. $800 a month is a lot of money per year. That's an extra 10 grand a year almost, right? Then you have an exit strategy. Look, at any time I can cash in on $70,000 that I have sitting there. What that does is, for me, I've done this. I did this in 2015. I ran into I almost ran out of money, but I had a property I could reach into my portfolio, stoke the fire, sell the note because there was equity. And now, instead of running out of money, boom, you sell the note and there's a $52,000 insurgence of cash that you have access to, rather than it being locked into net worth. It's net worth that you can draw on, right? You can pull from and use at any time, because you don't know what the future is going to hold. You don't know if you're going to get in a tight spot or if money's going to be there. And so, man, that's how you build wealth right there. That's freaking awesome.
So good. Because again, it's just another question to ask. Hey, would you take this cash offer? Okay, maybe not. But what about, would you do this? Right. And it could be life-changing money. And I'm talking career life-changing money by just asking that question. So it's something to definitely add to your vocabulary and your script. So I love that, Mark. Beautiful.
So Jonathan has a question here about state regulations with lease options. Yeah, Texas is a very difficult state to do lease options. However, there is somebody down there, Leon Johnson. He's a lease option expert. I'm actually going to get with him and try to find out how he's doing it. He's done hundreds of them down there. And I don't know the answer to that one in Texas. I don't do lease options in Texas. From what I understand, if you the max on a lease option can be 6 months down there, but there's got to be he probably found a strategy, a way through that. So I'll find that out, Jonathan, and then I'll respond back to you on that particular one. But one thing I do want to say on lease options, another side of it is, and if I'm doing a subject to or owner financing and a seller wants to do like a balloon, like they want to be paid off like 5 years or less, and you're paying pretty much close to that top dollar. And when I look at my deals and when I underwrite my deals, I always look at 2008. And one of the things I always do is like, okay, if this market shifts and I got to sit on this for a while, how long is it going to take it to go back? So one of the things to do, even though I can do owner financing or lease option, I'm like, okay, since you want a balloon on it and you won't extend it, I'll do a lease option instead, because a lease option gives you the option that you do not have to exercise and you can walk away from that deal if you go underwater. So that's the other side of it.
Bro,
so it's
powerful.
Yes, and it's proof of recession, right? So it's recession proof a little bit too if you set it up correctly. That's beautiful. Well, we're about halfway through, guys. So I wanted to now switch over a little bit and put Ronnie more on the hot seat, because I know, Mark, I know you got a couple of questions for Ronnie as well. But, just kind of starting off, Ronnie, how did you kind of get into, what's your experience with creative finance, and how'd you get into it? What have you done? I mean, if you could go ahead and please tell us that.
Yeah. So I found myself in 2014 with this passion to jump into real estate investing, right? I learned about wholesaling. I was selling investments at the time. I was a private client banker at Chase, and I was in sales, right? I'm selling, I'm working at the bank. I'm dealing with a high-end clientele, but I'm making average money, right? I'm making a good salary. I'm making commission. And I find myself at this spot where I want to jump into real estate investing, because I see, you know what, not only can I control my time and my life, I can have freedom, but I can make significantly more money in real estate than I can currently at this job. Like my cap here, $120,000 to $150,000 a year. In real estate, I can become a millionaire. Okay. So I'm looking at this, and I'm literally running around twice a week, putting bandit signs at intersections down major highways, right? Like imagine Ronnie in a Mitsubishi Eclipse 1998 GST turbo that with a freaking blow-off valve buzzing manual, racing through town with a whole stack of bandit signs on my chair, jumping out, pulling off, running around, putting bandit signs. Like I did that twice a week for a long time. So
my question is how you fit in the car.
Bro, I freaking love sports cars, but we're not going to get into that. So I'm jumping around, right? And when you're doing bandit signs, while you're doing it, most of the calls are not from sellers. Most of the calls are from contractors or from other investors or from, looking to connect or whatever.
Right.
So, and a lot of times it's tire kickers, right? And you don't get a lot. You usually get 3 or 4. If you're doing bandit signs, a quick trick is do it right before evening rush hour, and you can hit evening and morning rush hour. I don't necessarily recommend bandit signs, but that's what I did before they get pulled by code enforcement.
Yep.
So I'm out running around friggin' like chicken with my head cut off, and I get a call. Actually, I don't get the call. A call comes in. My partner at the time answers the phone, and this guy says, hey, look, I'm reaching out to other investors, people who are doing wholesaling. At this point, I've done about 7 or 8, 9 deals, wholesale deals. And he says, I can help you take the leads that wouldn't take, that you couldn't do cash offers on. I can help you close them by offering them full price, and you can get a fee. Very common, right? So I'm like, okay, well, right. My partner calls me and he's like, hey, this guy's I was like, hey, why don't you go? I couldn't go because I was working full time. So he met with this guy and came back. He's like, dude, he's doing a seminar, or he's not doing a seminar. He's getting a few people together and he's going to talk about it, and we can just kind of and see if it works. So I was like, all right. So we went on a Wednesday night. We went and sat down, and I sat down with Grant Kemp back when he got started. Okay. Grant was the one that called my bandit sign. And I found myself in this law office with Scott Horn and Grant. And they're basically, what it was is basically walking through a financial calculator on how, and basically telling us, yo, you can buy deals at full price. I'm sitting there playing with the calculator, and I hit the button for amortization. And I'm like, that's $300,000 for one deal. But I'm not even listening to what this dude is saying. I'm just playing on the calculator. Dude, that's it. I was like, all right, dude, I'm in. Over the next month, I brought 8 deals. I went through all my previous leads, came to the table, brought 8 deals, closed 8 more. I think it was 8. 8 more transactions we closed that one month. And from that point, I was hooked. I was like, yo, getting deals. I got cash flow, blah, blah, coming in. And then within 2 months from that period, I actually jumped into a partnership with them. And over the next year and a half, bought almost 120 homes using primarily creative financing using sub-2 wraps. From that point, after that portfolio was built, I decided, you know what? Because of some of this is where I have a love-hate relationship with cash flow. Because of some of my things that I didn't like with that model, I sold that portfolio. I sold my interest in it, and I went into basically wholesaling and utilizing creative financing as a purchase strategy, but not necessarily a long-term strategy. And that's where there's utility, right? Where you want to hold stuff as rentals. You can buy it and hold it as a rental. You want to do a wrap and create a note, you can do that. You want to jump into buy something that you're going to fix and flip without a lot of cash, you can do that too, utilizing the strategy of purchasing. And so what I found is, hey, when I think of being a millionaire, and this is kind of sideways, right? A lot of people will talk about net worth, they'll talk about cash flow, they'll talk about all these things. But when I think about it, it's like my whole life, a millionaire is someone who has cash, right? Who has millions in cash. And so as I was beginning to think about this, I was like, you know what? I need to adjust my strategy to put myself in a position where I have the power. And so let's adjust and use that cash in order to find ways so I can double it and I can double my business, right? So now what I did is I took the strategy, I took the learning, and I married them together and said, okay, how can I create a business that replicates money quickly to jump up to what does $1 million, $2 million, $3 million business look like? And that's where the switch happened, where it wasn't just I'm an investor in creative financing. I'm an investor who uses creative financing to grow my business to accomplish the lifestyle I want. And that switch happened for me in about mid 2015, where I was like, you know what? Real estate investing is a great investment, but I want to use that to catapult my business. And that's a whole nother conversation, but that's my story. That's kind of been my journey through this. And then I went back to creative financing again in 2019, and I just sold, I actually literally just closed on my second portfolio. I sold that portfolio off again. So me and creative financing have a love-hate relationship. Let's just put it that way.
I love this so much because I have two absolute studs. I have Ronnie and Mark, who, you have some of the history with Mark where he can talk about some of the stuff he's seen multiple cycles. And then you hear from Ronnie about guys who are really thinking we're talking doctorates in investing in business when you're talking to a Ronnie Walker. So it's awesome. This has been as my favorite Ed Milet says, I got goosebumps, guys. I got goosebumps.
Well, the question is, what if, right? So you're walking through this stuff. It's like, what if I could have freedom? What if I don't have to only make $75,000 grinding away 12 hours a week at this job? What if I could learn just one thing that changes my life, right? Dude, when you're in the midst of stress, whether you have let's say you're 2-3 years in, I've been here, and you're like, dude, I have been freaking grinding this out so much. I've been learning creative finance. I've been learning wholesaling. And I've had millions of dollars go through my hands, and I don't have much to hold up. But that guy before, he wanted to be here. What if I can overcome this challenge? What if I could figure out and unlock what Mark is talking about, the actual strategy to create that financial freedom where I can travel to Portugal, I can travel to Dubai, I can travel to Ireland, I can travel to UK, I can do what I want, right? It's all about asking yourself, what if I'm the one? What if I could be in the 1%? What if I put in the work? And God, that just gives me goosebumps because that was me, right? I'm making $100,000 a year at Chase. And I'm like, what if I could live the life that I dream about? What if I could, develop homes in Ireland? What if I could blank? Then all of a sudden those dreams start kicking in and you're like, am I willing to pay the price to do that? And that's what this group is about. Like with you guys watching, we are here literally in front of you so you don't have to make those same mistakes. When you're on your way to making financial freedom, it's like a jungle with no roadmaps. There are tigers, there are beasts, there are enemies, there are other hunters that will kill you that are trying to do it. There is so much going on. And getting across that jungle for the first time, guys, it is so difficult. Why do you think the graveyard of real estate investors is so many? It's so difficult, right? It's the simplest, hardest thing you'll do. But here at Real Estate Power Play, we want to give you the tools and the tips to be able to say, hey, this is the path, right? Literally, this is the path. Do this. And as you're doing that, you will be able to get that success and you'll be able to add it to your tool belt. And so that's why we're here. So guys, as you're asking questions, we want to ask that through different shows and different things. So anyway,
I just want to piggyback off of that about the creative financing. Once you start understanding different strategies, your mind, you can let your mind and explore, and you can come up with your own strategies. Like I do a lot of, like I do a sub 2 and then I'll sell no lease options or vice versa. And like, you can just start looking at, oh, I could do this. What about if I try that strategy and add this to it to kind of help out? So you can kind of, and that's the beauty of you just being creative and coming up with different ways. Just make sure that you talk to your local attorney and make sure that you're within compliance. But yes, just long as you're staying in compliance and following, you can come up with great ideas and different strategies. And it really is. And like, you don't need a lot of money to get into some of these strategies, like wholesaling, lease options, even owner financing. We took down that 11 doors and I put 0 down and the seller ended up paying me.
Well, and that's another thing that I think a lot of us don't have. And Marty, I'd love to hear what you think, because it reminds me when I'm thinking about this, it reminds me real estate is really us being opportunity seekers. And Marty is seeking large opportunities, right? And from those opportunities comes commercial deals, comes storage units, comes mobile home parks. So Marty, when you're going after this, when you think of opportunities and jumping in and adding things to your tool belt, how are you taking and learning and applying it to your business? And how do you think about jumping to that next step? And like, how did you go from, man, I'm going to flip houses to, yo, I'm buying 2 mobile home parks this year.
Right.
Right. Because that's what you're doing. Like,
right.
You're like, yo, and then it's like, dude, what if we did that?
Yeah. You know what, guys, and this is so good because first off, when Ronnie was just talking about, what he's talking about is his mindset. It's years of personal development. This is not something you just change overnight. It's little things that you're constantly working on to try to get better every day, even if it's just 1% better, right? But if we're 1% better every day, we're going to be 360% better every year, right? So and for me, Ronnie, when you ask that question, how do you go from working a 9 to 5 to then becoming full-time, right? Well, it's a mindset shift that has to occur. And it's so funny when you said, how much would your self 2 years ago want to be where you are now, right? But now you're like, this sucks. Where I am now is, again, it's all objective, but this sucks. Matt and I, my partner, are like, listen, we're flipping houses, we're doing great, but dude, we can do more, right? Because it's a mindset thing. Because when you see the people that are doing more, you go, this person's not better than me. So how, right? So, and then who, right? So it's also that it's who's also doing this and who can we talk to? And then how do we elevate? And for me, it was just confidence. And it starts with just, those daily routines that help you so that you can make those bigger risks. Because 100% I believe this, that the more confidence you have in yourself, the more willing you are to take bigger risks. And I believe that the bigger risks that you take, right, calculated risks, of course, but the more willingness you have to that's how you hit life-changing numbers and becoming part of that 1%. You want to be world class. It's not middle class. It's not even upper class. It's world class. And that's what we strive for every day. So yeah, it really came as a mindset shift to say, guys, do we want to, Matt and I at our meetings, do we want to do this forever? No, we don't want to flip houses forever, right? Because that's more of a job. We really want to set ourselves up for the long term. So yeah, it was a mindset shift. And then it was, let's just take the same energy, the same ferociousness, the same absolute just killer mindset that we have as finding flips. And then let's cold call, or let's find mobile home park guys that want to sell to us and that will like to sell to us, that need to sell to us, right?
That's
so
right.
all those things were in play there.
That reminds me of a thing that you see in a lot of fiction books, a lot of fantasy I like to read, and even life, is a lot of us we're on this journey from this location that we find ourselves that are stuck in, right? From this little village in the middle of nowhere, right? It could be, Rochester, New York, and, one of the suburbs and nobody knows about. It could be, in Alaska and Wasilla. It could be from Florida, in the middle of nowhere, around a bunch of people. We're all in these different spots. And we go on this journey of like, you know what? I want to go to the top of that freaking mountain. Right. And so we exert all this energy and we go and we climb this mountain. Right. And it's so difficult. And then once we get to the top of the mountain, we have this amazing view. And we look around and we're like, dude, I just flipped 55 houses this year. Or in the last 2 years, I did 30 deals and I made myself $250,000. And I got to do this vacation. And now you're at the top of the mountain. You're like, is this it? But then what you do is you look around and you see, yo, that's a valley. Yo, that's a valley. And you just climbed out of a valley. But what a lot of people don't realize is the valleys, like where the work is, where you're flipping the houses, that's where all the life happens. Right? That's where the streams are. That's where the grass is. That's where the flowers are. The top of the mountain is this. A friend of mine said it's a bald, empty rock, is what he said. But what you get when you get to the top of that mountain, when you've accomplished that first major hurdle, you get to look around and say, okay, I've made it here. Where do I want to live now? And now you have options, right? Do I want to live in that valley? Do I want to live by that beach? Do I want to live? And what I mean by live is not in a specific location, but what do you want your life to look like, right? What do you want the days to look like? Do you want it to be traveling and doing deals this way? Am I willing to pay that price? Am I willing to do that on a day-to-day basis? In each area that you look at and the direction you want to go, that all seems possible because, dude, look at this hill I just had and all the resources I gained here. I can use those resources now to carve out a domain and a kingdom for myself, and I can create an empire around it, and you get to choose how you do that. That's the wonderful part about going through this first jungle on your way of growing up. And I want to tie this back to lease options. Lease options is a great way of getting to the top or even living in and creating wealth. I mean, look at what Mark's done. If you guys are following him, gosh, he's created a lifestyle for himself, and it's based on what he wants, right? It's not based on what other people want. It's based on what he wants. I've created a lifestyle based on what I want. I'm pursuing a lifestyle, and I think Marty's in the same way. We are pursuing being world-class, and you can do that, and you do that by just internalizing it and saying, okay, let me learn these strategies. Let me figure out what lease options look like, and let me decide what direction we want to go. Guys, I mean, that's powerful. So you pick the one thing, you go to the top, and then you choose where you want to go, and you live there. And once you're there, and this is why I love this show. Again, I'm harping on the show and just learning from you guys and being in this environment, especially Mark, is once you're there, you have these resources. And guys, we want to share that, right? Like lease option, go back and listen to what Mark said. There were so many nuggets. I mean, controlling, if the market goes down, lots of different things. So Marty, I want to give it back to you. You're the host here. I'm used to doing it, but go back. I got myself fired up. I don't want to take the spotlight.
I love when Ronnie's fired up. And I also want to just kind of say something about Mark too, because, Mark also, when he was talking about it, he had a business with, 50, 70, 100 employees, right? So he lived that life, right? And he now knows because he's, even though he may say he's older, he looks just like us. He looks as young as us. He's living a life. He created a lifestyle business that anybody can do and still make over 6 figures, right? Which is really super beautiful. I love that. I love that you can create a giant mega business like the ones I know. I know Ronnie, whatever he wants to do, he'll do. I know what I want to do, I'm going to do. But Mark's already been down that path, and he's done that. I did want to ask both of you a question. I guess we'll start with Ronnie here. Could you give me your best deal, maybe this year, that you've done through creative financing? Just go ahead and give us like one of your best deals that you remember. Maybe it doesn't have to be your most profitable. It just could be like a favorite deal that you did.
Yeah. So my favorite deal ever was actually not this year. It was back in 2017. So I bought a house, and the house was in Frisco. It looked like a castle. It had a circular build. Okay. We bought it literally. We closed on it the Friday before the Tuesday of foreclosure. And guys, talk about like back and forth with a seller, like not being afraid. And we're talking about like a $500,000 purchase here, right? So it was a big purchase. I was bringing 70 grand to the table, slightly nervous about it. But it could either be worth, I don't remember the exact, I could either make $100,000 profit, or I could make 20, right? Like that was like the spread, like it was in that little bit. And we bought the deal. I remodeled it. Dude, yeah, I took my whole family out to the house, right? Like it was a sweet house. It was like 5,500 square feet. We went and played to the house the day where I had people come through. We played out in the backyard, beautiful backyard with an amazing view. And I remember walking in and being like, you know what? I'm going to have a house someday like this, right? Like I'm going to have, because at that time we were living in a 1,700 square foot house in Forney, Texas. I was like, I'm going to have a house like this. I'm going to have a big house. Kids can run. We can have as much time as we want. Like this is what it's about. Well, come to turn out, we finished the day. I finished up the remodeling. I literally made 3 payments on the house and turned around, put it on the market. It immediately sold. The net profit after all of it was over 100,000.
Love it.
And at that time I really needed the money too. So it was like, you know what? Not only did that deal, and I think that's what happens at some point, at least for me, is I'm doing the deal and it's like, yo, I'm going through the business, and then I come across something really exciting, and it's like, you know what? I'm making money on this deal, but I want to live in this. Right. And so that's, man, as far as a favorite, I would say that not only did I make that was the most money I've ever made on a property, but it also created this. I mean, that's why I'm in a 4,000 square foot house right now with literally 400 acres around me, right? Like there's a national preserve over here, and right, like that sparked even more of the dream. And that was 4 years into my journey. So that'd be my all-time favorite deal.
I love it because it gave you a vision too, right?
That's right.
So not only did you take the risk to do it, it worked out, which when you're the luckiest guy in the world and when God has your back, right? That happens. And I think I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And I know Ronnie does, and I know Mark does. So those things happen. So Mark, what was your best deal?
I'll ask you the same question afterwards. But for me, I look at deals just as a transaction nowadays. I don't like fall in love with deals anymore. What I enjoy mainly is really helping the seller or buyer. It makes me, I enjoy that more than anything. Like somebody like, just thanking you so much for helping them out of a situation that they're in and they don't know how to get out of. I'll give you an example. I just helped somebody not too long ago. She was a seller in a situation, and I didn't do the deal, but I gave her some really good advice to help her out. It was a really bad situation. I don't want to get into it all, but she was stuck and she didn't know what to do. And she even talked to some attorneys, and the attorneys were just kind of giving her a runaround. They wanted all this money, blah, blah, blah. And I just gave her some advice, hey, do this, this, and this. And it solved the problem. She called me up and like literally crying and thanking me. And I enjoy that in the business more than anything. So deals, I have many deals, but I don't look at them like, wow, I love certain ones anymore. That's just where I'm at. How about you, Marty?
You gotta love when a guy's done so many deals he doesn't even remember his favorite deals. They're, you know what I mean? Like that's Mark Monroe for you. But I guess my favorite deal had been, I'll just say this year, because it's one of those things where it's just like it giving you the confidence to ask the questions. Because sometimes when you, like I said, when you ask the questions, sometimes people say yes. So I asked the individual, hey, would you take the equity in installments, right? One of my questions I like to ask. And, he said, well, sure. And I talked about how about you just hold it? Do you need the money? No. Well, could you give it to your kids later on? Yeah, I could. Would you hold it for 30 years? Yeah. Okay, great. And, would you mind if I just, nothing down and I could just pay you monthly going forward? Sure. And, so really what it was just ask, because you never know. You never know what they're going to say. And that's the beauty of this business, is that so many different sellers are in different situations. They don't always need the cash that day, is kind of what we learned. And sometimes they are looking at long-term, but it's about just making sure that you're asking the questions, and you never know what they're going to say. And then ask the question, then shut up. So don't try to get them out of that idea of selling you a house with no money down and holding paper for 30 plus years. So anyway, guys, that's kind of my favorite. And we're kind of getting to the end of the show here. I guess we could go around for the next couple minutes and talk about maybe next week, or what would you guys like to end the show with here?
Well, Marty, you hit the nail on the head on that statement. It's about just asking. There's so many of those deals out there. 40% of homes have no mortgage. There's so much of it out there. But I'm going to, for myself, one thing I want to put out there, you guys, the viewers, do us a favor, give us some feedback. What do you want? Do you like us just talking about our stories, or do you want us to go into more of the meats and potatoes? Give us feedback, what you guys want from us. Would really appreciate it. I know a lot of you guys are watching this later on because we're live during the daytime, but leave us comments, likes, thank yous, whatever, and just let us know what we can do to kind of help you guys out.
Yeah, and I would say, remember, we're here 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday at the moment. Also, as you're going through, tag your nuggets and what that looks like. So otherwise, Mark, man, thank you so much for sharing your thought. Marty, for being the moderator today. Guys, let's finish out the week and go and do a power play this week, guys.